Welcome to the next session. I'm very happy to have my teammates, Fabio and Ercan, here on stage for the next presentation. And also big thank you, guys, for all the organizational part here we're doing on the event. And yeah, looking forward to dive into the topic of open source LLMs. Thanks, guys.
Thank you very much, Roger. I hope I'm audible. Just before we start, I'd like to make a 10-second video of you folks for our video. So everybody, raise your hands. Both hands, open source. Yay! Thank you very much. This is for sure gonna make it to the final footage. Thank you. Thanks, guys. Okay, so what's our topic today? We are going to talk about the rise of open source LLMs. Yeah, as a matter of fact, we will have to improvise here a little bit as we were pretty busy organizing all the details. As a matter of fact, Fabio was running to the supermarket 5 minutes ago to get some milk, and now we have milk. And yeah, so we will improvise. We'll improvise here. So what we'd like to share with you here, initially we've published a blog post about what we are doing and our journey with the open source LLMs, right? So we'll give a bit more of a detail on this topic. Who we are, first of all, yeah, as Roger mentioned, we are part of the Siemens.com core team. My name is Ercan, and we have the one and only. What's your name, sir?
Fabio.
Fabio, sir.
Thank you very much. So the most important thing, I'm the sad guy who keeps you up from lunch, so we will do it really quick today. What do we want to talk about, or where do we come from? So as you already heard in the morning from Roger with the amazing introduction speak, we are called Siemens.com. And it's not only a GitLab installation, it's not only the API Siemens.com stuff we do or the My Siemens.com stuff we do. We are in the enablement business. So we want to make people at Siemens be able to work. We want to make or empower people so they can do more awesome stuff, they can innovate, and we really want to build the fundament and remove all the unnecessary burdens. So code Siemens.com, obviously, our core piece is GitLab CE, which we still love, admire, and contribute every day. Obviously, with all the feature GitLab brings from scratch, collaboration, CI/CD, the registry, as we heard, and we were really busy the last few weeks, but Code Siemens.com is much more than that. We have topics around business partner, what Roger mentions. We have various core APIs from directory services to financial services, and the most important thing, what we're going to talk today, our LLM services. We already mentioned it in the morning, 70,000 users, 79 countries, 300,000 builds every day. So it's not just an installation under like some desk. It's a big thing with heavy usage. And I think the big question is now, why do we build that stuff?
Yeah, thank you. So why we are doing what we are doing. So in terms of especially why we are looking into open source LLMs, in-house hosting and deployment. First of all, because it's fun, but there's also other reasons for that. So when you are able to deploy an open source large language model API in-house, you can ensure that all the data stays internal, right? So we have the different confidentiality ratings on the platforms within Siemens, and we have the highest confidentiality rating for the intellectual property and all the code that is stored here. So we'd like to keep it that way, right? The second reason is cost effectiveness. Obviously, you don't pay any license fees, or there is no per user based subscription fees. For example, when you look at the Copilot today, there's I think the last time I checked, $20 per user per month. And with the 70,000 users, if you do the basic math, you arrive at millions already. So that's another reason. The other thing with the open source LLMs is the customizability, right? So you can actually train these LLMs based on your special needs or different kind of products that you are building. So that's a big plus as well. Another thing that we'd like to mention is the RAG applications, right? We will give an example later on. So this way you can actually tune the LLMs to answer your questions based on the context or generate code based on the context that you're giving. And Additionally, of course, it's a ecosystem question. So if we are able to provide these APIs to our developers within the same ecosystem that the Code Siemens.com developers are used to, that's a great. Last but not least, another advantage is the open source LLMs are actually catching up very fast. So here you see a little graph that we have. This is published by the company Arc Invest Research. So they've been looking at the trends on the closed source LLMs and open source LLMs, right? And what we see here, the closed source ones, obviously they came earlier, right? And when you look at the trend, that's the rate of improvement in terms of the 5-shot MMLU performance, the metric they use. And then the open source ones came out later, right? But when you look at the trend there, it seems that the rate of improvement on the open source LLMs are actually going faster. So if this trend holds, we might actually see that the open source LLMs are crossing the closed source LLMs at some point. And yeah, so those are really the motivation to our work that we've been investigating in this area. And what we have done until now, Fabio is going to say.
I will show exactly. So now we have the who out of the way and the why. Let me show you the how, so how we exactly implemented all of that. So our main part is the core LLM API, what we call. So it's API Siemens.com/LLM, really easy to remember name. But we did not stop just there. As mentioned, we are in the enablement business, so we built a lot of pieces around that. And obviously, we don't gonna into the nitty-gritty details of our setup, but what's really cool to see, the developers on the top right-hand corner have various ways how to interact with a LLM API. Maybe you're a data scientist, because we are not, or you're just a user of Code Siemens.com or GitLab, or you wanna do some weekend hacking and want to develop the next AI tool of the future. So that's why we offer different ways how to interact with our various LLMs. Back down, you really have the core, what Ercan already mentioned. That's all hosted in-house, that's maintained by us. So all the data being sent there will never leave Siemens, basically. More important is this part here, which will afterwards also introduce a little bit what we kind of consider the sustainable AI. So in Zug, headquarter here, where we have lake water cooling and lovely solar power, so it's a beautiful day for that. We will build up on-premise compute power that we can really cheaply offer AI workloads. So GPU-based runners for fine-tuning, what Ercan already mentioned, interference so that you can actually run the LLM, or even some fine-tuning. So that's all stuff which we plan to have on-site, which then connects to API Siemens.com. You can see this here. And obviously, we love to use that stuff ourselves as well. So in our kind of first use case we came up with is support automation. We get a lot of support requests, and as everyone knows, big companies, especially Siemens, the proxy is always a topic, and just to automate away the proxy questions would save us a few hours. And that's exactly kind of the reason why we came up with that. But we did not just implement a support bot and then say, hey, that's our secret sauce. No, we didn't stop there. We pretty much made every single piece of this bot accessible. So what you see is the OpenAI compatible API. We built a chatbot which actually can answer the questions based on Siemens contexts. One of the future topics, which Ercan will explain a little bit later, is to kind of democratize this as well. So you as a project can also jump on the bandwagon. And then we also have a GitLab integration. So it's basically just a bot. And many Siemens people actually built similar things in the past. Where we obviously shine is just accessibility. So we can make this accessible to every Siemens employee and not just a single project or a single group. And you can see that we have this whole ecosystem now, and a little bit like a neural network, the neurons is the magic sauce. So the more connections we have, the more features users will actually see at the end. How does this look like if you're a user? That's probably the coolest part, because big companies, you kind of think slow or expensive or difficult. And that's kind of where we shine again. So we have this lovely UI called My Siemens.com, where you do business partner management, key management. So that's kind of the one-stop shop to kind of get all your keys. You just can go there, select LLM, create the key, and you're ready to rock. And you can use all the OpenAI compatible tools, SDKs, libraries, and just kind of rock. Ercan will show some lovely examples for that as well. And as you can also see there, we obviously have a lot of documentation, so Siemens-specific stuff, which you probably will not find out in the internet, and then integrations en masse. One example will be continued there for Ercan also shows. So that's kind of the variety. So Ercan, can you tell me some stuff about Visual Studio Code?
Of course. So yeah, as we are in the development enablement business, as the code Siemens.com, right? I don't know if that's a term, but let's say it, developer enablement. Right, so what the first thing we looked at is, okay, we have now an API endpoint, OpenAI compatible API endpoint, which we can provide, but what can the developers, how can they benefit from it, right? And we didn't have to search so far. Actually, we came across this project called Continue Dev, and we are in contact with them now, and hopefully we'll collaborate further in the future. So this is essentially an open source autopilot for your Visual Studio Code or JetBrains IDEs, right? So what you need to do is you just get the API key, you configure the base API endpoint on your client, and then basically you get here a chat window inside your Visual Studio Code. You then get basically a lot of suggestions that you can choose and edit the code. You can also say, okay, select the code, create unit tests for this one, and then it will do that. And there's also a new feature that has been just released, is the tab completion. So you get actually, for example, calculate me Fibonacci numbers or whatever you like, and then it will try to, give you some suggestions. Is it GitHub Copilot good? Maybe not yet, but it's improving very fast, and many of our colleagues and us, we are using this on a day-to-day basis together with our API endpoints. Another example, as we are kind of looking at this application or kind of as an ecosystem together, that we have found is you can actually use easily with local graphical user interfaces as well. Chatbox is one example. So this is simply, an application you can download and install on various operating systems. You again similarly configure the API endpoint and your API key, and you're off you go. You start chatting with our LLM API endpoints, right? And this one also has the advantage that it can offer different profiles. So, for example, if you're a software developer, there's a preset prompt for that. If you're a social media influencer or travel guide, so there are presets of prompts that you can actually use and retune and modify as well. So that's a pretty handy tool for our developers as well. If you're interested, just check it out. And this is only one of the chat clients, actually. We've seen that there are many others. ChatGPT Lite is another one that also worked smoothly out of the box. So that's also for your information if you like to try it out. And with that, there's another cool application that we'd like to talk about, which is the Code AI bot.
Thank you so much, Ercan. So I already mentioned it previously. Having tools is nice, but those tools should always integrate well with your workflow. And since we are in the enablement and GitLab business and kind of maintain a big GitLab platform, and what's easier than creating a bot that actually talks with you? So already today on Code Siemens.com, there's this funky bot called Code AI, which you can mention, and based on intent detection. So we will actually try to understand what you want from it, and it will then respond accordingly. So based on the questions and kind of the function which is used, we amend a lot of additional context. Can either be the pipeline which is broken, or the log output of the pipeline, or it can be just a description itself. And obviously this can go on and on and on. If you kind of work with epics or other GitHub Enterprise feature or other GitHub feature like the wiki, this can be extended and extended and extended. There are great libraries out there, which also some colleagues of our team maintain. And here you can see Ercan interacting with the bot. And we really try to come up with good merge requests. We all heard how important it is to create good patch sets in the morning. But sometimes we ourselves are quite lazy when it comes to merge request descriptions. So one of the first features which we actually implemented, and this was kind of a weekend project, was to create a summary of a merge request just based on the diff set. So if you're just too lazy to update the merge request, or you're not really that fluent in English or good like the AI, you can actually ask it. And the cool thing is you can already see the current functionalities. It started out more as a proof of concept, but the cool thing is that many people from Siemens jumped on the bandwagon and contributed functions. So clean code, really good example. Our colleagues from DI, Digital Industries, they contributed that. We had a lovely contribution also about a discussion summary from our colleague Nate's. We have more contributions now from SI, and I think the list keeps on going. And cool part is it's really simplistic, it's really easy, it's inner source, so it really keeps pace with the innovation. I think that's kind of the cool part. So, RAG, Ercan already teased it, and I think now he will actually show you what this means and how to kind of do it.
Thank you so much. Yeah, so this is one last usage example that we'd like to share with you folks today. So RAG stands for Retrieval-Augmented Generation, right? So with this scheme, what you can actually do is you can take an open source LLM like Mistral, CodeLlama, whatever you like, off the shelf, no additional training or so. But what you can do is you can ingest your code documentation, internal project code, or whatever things that you'd like to use as a context. And LangChain is a popular open source library for this, and we found out that it's actually pretty easy to get started working with it. So the way it works is that what we do at the moment is we take, for example, our internal documentation, some code projects, right, and then we basically vectorize these into embeddings by tokenization, right? And essentially all your documentation and code is converted into a bunch of floating point numbers, right? And this is stored in a vector database, separate from the LLM itself, right? And when you ask your question, basically this vector database is, consulted first, included in the final prompt, and the vanilla off-the-shelf LLM is using this information as well to create context-based answers for your questions. So what we have done is at the moment basically have an internal bot which we've implemented in a hackathon, but at the moment it's already in a production and we are testing it heavily, and it's performing pretty well. Of course, it gets a bit confused if you start putting too much data in it, documentation and so on. There maybe we need to do some kind of separation, categorization of this kind of documentation or that kind of code, and some kind of tuning would be necessary, but it's very, very promising. And what we'd like to also, as Fabio mentioned, is that we'd like to be able to enable this for our developers so that they can say, okay, include my project for the RAG application. I'd like to use the LLM with all the information that my project has, and then you start basically having this specific LLM use case for your development. So that's kind of ongoing work. Yeah, and with that, let's talk about the legal aspects a little.
Thank you very much. So legal, one of our favorite topics. So if you paid attention over last year's open source event, we had our colleague from Siemens Legal and Compliance, Felix, talking about the legal aspect of Copilot. And obviously this applies to every single LLM, no matter if it's Microsoft or self-made, self-hosted. One big part is obviously that you cannot copyright something that the machine creates. That's an important part. But even more important is the code you generate really generate a code, or was this maybe just copied from a GitHub project under LGPL or HGPL license, and you just kind of commit copyright infringement without knowing that. That's kind of the whole aspect of plagiarism detection. That's a really hard topic to completely solve. Microsoft does quite some good work there with automated scanning, also kind of limit the size and the code which is generated to kind of limit the originality, and they also have those protection rules in place that they will support you in case you kind of get sued. Obviously, we are not lawyers. We cannot guarantee you a protection fund for that stuff, but what we can do quite well is solve it with technology. So already today, every single code part generated by our API is recorded will be sent to our legal and compliance colleagues, and they will do a scan just to kind of prevent like plagiarism. And what we also have here, it's kind of the future part what we will do. The cool thing about open source LLM is they're to a big part open, right? We already know an LLM is not really open source until you have all the training data and the weights and all the kind of the procedure how it was created. But the cool thing is a lot of LLMs use public data called the stack. So that's a huge collection, I think 60 terabyte with the application of GitHub, GitLab projects, other stuff, and this is all accessible. And the cool thing is that if you generate something using the AI, you can actually backtrack this to the original source. And then you even know, hey, this was created by this project under this license, and it does not affect you, or if it affects you, how you can deal with that stuff. And this is one of kind of the ways how we try to kind of tackle this whole topic, that we do this whole backtrack, and if something applies, and if we kind of see there is a not so cool license for enterprises, we can already prevent that, inform the users, and that's kind of the power of knowing what actually is part of the model. So, Ercan, last topic of the day, I think, sustainable AI.
Yeah, do you like to?
Yeah.
Sure. Cool, yeah. This is a topic that's kind of future work, something that we'd like to do and we are kind of actively working on. So the idea is that, as Fabio mentioned, we have a main building at Siemens, which is solar powered, and if we can basically, bring in some GPUs there in-house inside the building, get it by basically running with the green, or completely green form, right? The green AI, that's what we'd like to achieve. Because, so the typical AI offerings, as you already know, is charging you based on the number of tokens that you're using, right? And which kind of gets expensive. And what we've kind of did some calculations, basic back-of-the-envelope calculations within the team. And we kind of have the feeling that the amortization of buying a physical machine versus using the AWS G5 GPU machines, it's about 3 to 4 months, actually, the break-even point. So, which looks like a good investment, and it would be also, to really have the full knowledge, everything in-house, fully controlled. So, yeah, just we would like to highlight that, the companies with serious plans for AI, they have the hardware and so on in-house. So that's kind of a work that we are looking at. That's quite interesting, and yeah, that's we have already rooms in the R&D center, and yeah, let's see how that goes. And yes, we have the helmets as well.
Awesome, Ercan. Feedback from the community. I think that kind of brings us to the end of this whole presentation, basically. Feedback is really, really great so far. I mean, the most important thing about our work is really working with the community. We don't build something just because we like it. I mean, LLMs, AI is a lot of fun, but again, we're in the enablement business, and to kind of receive feedback to kind of co-develop stuff with the community. And we already partook in a few hackathons or even guided people where to use fine-tuning, where to use RAG, where to kind of apply this and that, or people even forked our AI bot. So that's the cool thing. And together with the community, we really want to push the topic further, and that's basically the whole goal, to kind of see where is demand, where are gaps other vendors don't fill, and how can we fill that. And that pretty much is the whole presentation. I think you already noticed that's not a data scientist talk we had here. If you take one thing with you, it's really you can also democratize AI development for yourself. All of the stuff we showed, you can run locally. There are amazing tools out there like Olama. AI will probably not replace all of us, but I think if you kind of ignore AI, you will certainly kind of be left alone in the dust. So yeah, use it, play with it, and if you have any question, we're outside if you want to talk about AI and LLM. Thanks.